Hey, I'm Steve Sapato, and you're listening to my podcast, which in this case could be the Happiness Agenda, and it could be Speaker Talks podcast. We have two different things that we love to promote, and of course, what we really want to promote is you. We want you to be more successful. We want you to find more happiness. Today, I have the wonderful pleasure of being able to share with Paul Ybarra. And is that how you pronounce it, Paul?
Yes, you got it.
You know, when I grew up with several of the guys named Ybarra, but you know, everybody's different. It's like when I have a couple friends now who own restaurants, and it's Nguyen, and they go by Huynh. And then I met with somebody else, and they're like Nguyen, and I went, well, you guys have to tell me, right? Because that's the way it works these days. And so, anyway, as you can see on the thing, it says Coach Paul. So, Paul, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. I like to dive into the why of what I do and who I am. So, you know, born and raised in San Jose, California, didn't have a father, had a stepfather, had a crazy childhood, as many of us have. But it truly wasn't the addictions that I needed to be set free from. It was literally the bitterness, the rejection, the abandonment, all of those things. And so as I've, progressed through time, serving the Lord, doing what I do now, in the last probably 10 years, probably up until about 2 years ago, I actually became a coach. Prior to that, I was already coaching people. I just didn't know that it was a business. You know what I'm saying?
That's right. Yeah, you weren't making money on it. Yeah, I mean,
right.
I did that for 20 years. People go, Steve, I need your advice. I go, sure, no problem. And now of course, we get into the age of virtual stuff and business coaching, life coaching. We go, hey, I could have gotten paid for this the whole time. I could have been rich. I could have been a contender, right?
Exactly. And so, just through time, then I, pursued it. And so now I am the founder of Identity of One Coaching. And what we do is we specialize in helping men and women like yourself break free from their past, uncover the gifts that have been hidden for so long, and set those free. And so, that's pretty much in a nutshell of who I am and why I do what I do. So, and also I'm just so honored to be on your podcast. So thank you so much, Steve, for having me. And I'm excited to dive into this conversation.
Yeah, I think a lot of us, when we hear that kind of stuff, I put out something the other day. I said, hey, why are there so many life coaches out there? They used to be called friends, right? But because you'd go unburden yourself for your friends and talk to them. And now we find ourselves in a society where we don't have very many friends. We don't know the neighbor across the street. We don't know the person next to us. We don't speak on the airplane to anybody. It's like, hey, you got part of my armrest. We'll try and wrestle with it without ever saying a word. It's like, oh, it's my turn. No, it's your turn. But we don't really get to know each other. We don't say, hey, I sat next to Tom for 3.5 hours on the airplane, nothing like that. So we have gotten alienated from each other. And that's part of the challenge. Also, at the same time, when we talk about what does it take, I mean, I've got my story, you've got your story, but let's suffice it to say that there's lots of things that we didn't know. For 50 years, I said, I'm not good with my hands. And when somebody pointed out that I've owned many businesses and I fixed all these things and I worked on all this stuff, and I still say, well, I'm not good with my hands. And they would go, well, how can that be when you've done all this stuff? And then I wonder what makes me say that. Isn't that what you guys do when you coach? You dig that stuff out of us, right?
Absolutely. And, you've actually brought something to mind. For years, I always said, I don't know how to speak. Like, I don't, I'm not well gifted in speaking. But when I really look at everything, I mean, I'm just, thank you for pointing that out, because I'm like, I've always had a lot of followers, just a lot of people that have always been like, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? So I think, in everything in that arena, like you said, that's what we do is help dig that out and really truly listen, like listening to somebody say what they need to say, and then start finding the root of that issue and helping them work through that, because that's when you really truly win somebody, is when you're listening intently, and just asking those questions like, okay, so I'm hearing this. Is your intention this? What do you mean by that? You know what I'm saying? Because so many times in communication, words are lost because we're just quick to answer. But if
Well,
we
we
just
listen. How's that go, Paul? We listen with the intent to answer. We don't listen with the intent to hear, right?
exactly. And so as you're listening and you're hearing, it's like, wow, so that's how we dig it out. And so just helping people get to their identity, whatever that is. Because, I mean, just I don't know what a lot of people think, but for me, um, we live in a society. If you're going to church, the number one thing is what's your identity, and it's always, well, I'm a child of God. I get that, but what's your identity? Like, what do you function in? What is the one thing, the gift that you have? So, like you said earlier about having different businesses and fixing different things, you're going, I kind of am pretty good with my hands. And so, just really finding and defining all of the overwhelm that people have told a person, this is what you need to be, and this is where you need to go, and this is the kind of school that you need to do, and these are all the check boxes that you need to check. At the end of the day, when you look at it all, going, I really don't like doing that. What's my passion? Like, how can I create this thing that's my passion to help somebody, servanthood, and then, put a price tag on it because it's a value that's attached to it. And so when we meet with people, it's like, listen, here's what the program is, here's what this is, here's what this movie's going to cost, right? You go to a theater, the cost of the ticket is next to nothing, but it's the food that costs more. It's the value, right?
That's right. The popcorn. Oh my gosh. Who
Got to
thought
have the
popcorn would
popcorn.
be $12, right?
And so it's that value that's placed on it. Why? You get to go in and now pick your seats online. Now they have one, those ones that come and serve you. So now you can
Oh
be
yeah.
secluded from other people and you can have a little party,
That's
right?
right.
You don't have to clean up. You don't have to do any of that. All you got to do is go get served and go home. So there's a value that's attached to that, and if we as a people would understand what our value is and what we're bringing to people, I think we would live in a whole better place to be able to achieve that in life.
You
So
know,
yeah, I
Paul,
mean,
yeah, that's I teach people how to be speakers, whether it's
mm,
how to get over their fear of speaking just so they can talk to small groups, or whether it's how to become a professional speaker. And
right.
one of the things we talk about is where's your expertise? And people go,
Mm,
what? So I mean, and most of us don't think we have an expertise. You want to make money online. I tell people all the time, you want to make money online, find your expertise and
mhm,
then farm that expertise. And people go, well, like I had one person says, well, I'm a server at a, pancake house or something. And I go, okay, so what's your expertise? And they go, I'm just a server. I go, no, 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 no. There's all kinds of expertises within that. Like I've owned and managed restaurants. I've owned and managed ice cream stores, sporting goods stores, you name it, I've done it, bars, nightclubs. And I say everybody has their expertise. So your expertise might be, right, how to set the tables so that they're absolutely perfect every time. Your expertise might be how to fold the napkins. Your expertise might be how to greet the client, the customers when they
mm,
walk in, because you and I know that when you walk into some of these places, you walk in, you stand there and look around, and people are like, hey, I'll be with you in a minute. That's not an expertise, right? So
right.
you teach them your expertise so that the restaurant, so the place you work can grow. And everybody, whether you're what you think you're the loneliest person or you think you're the best person, always people always go, well, we've been taught to even say hi to the janitor. Janitors have an extraordinary amount of knowledge on all kinds of areas having to do with cleaning. So
Right.
we all have an expertise. So my expertise, when people ask, I go is teaching people how to find their expertise and become proficient at delivering that information in a package
Mm,
form. But it's truly, I mean, we've got so many we can share with. You want to know how to do this, you want to know how to do, how many jobs have you had in your life, right?
right.
All of those have a form of expertise. So when we talk about that, you've got it exactly right. When you said a child of God, I'm always, I don't go to a featured religion, I guess you'd say it is.
Right.
Church has turned me off many times over the years because
Amen.
well, we're all flawed, but
Right.
people who are in the church, and I was brought up to believe that God accepted everyone. And of course, you go to some of these places, and they're like, I was at one place, and singing in the choir, so we were there practicing for our Christmas stuff. And one lady's kid was always just a pain, running around, making noise. Everybody's always like, shh, you got to shush him down. So like the third week, I'll say, of this practice, I found something at the kids store, and it was, I'll call it fart goop for lack of the right thing. But
Right.
if you went in this, container, and if you pushed on it, it
Oh
trapped
yeah.
the air, and then
Yeah.
it would go,
Yeah.
right? And I said, what little kid wouldn't like that? So I got there that night and I said to his mother, hey, can we set him out and have him play with this? And she said, oh, that'd be great. Thank you. We set him outside. So he wasn't even in the same room. And you could hear it out there in the hallway. Right. And one lady in the choir, she looked at me and she said, you are a horrible person. I said, I am? Why? She went, why would you give them that makes those obscene noises? And I was like, he's not running around bothering anybody now, so it's a real good idea. And she was like, I don't think it is, and I think you should be ashamed. And I was like, really? This is one of my Christian friends saying that fart goop was something to be ashamed of. But it's that kind of stuff where we judge other people, don't we? And that's what
Right.
we have to avoid. You and I help people because we stop judging and start listening, right?
Absolutely. You have touched on something that is near and dear to my heart because I'm in that same facet. So I am a pastor, right? But I don't. God hasn't called me to build a church. God has called me to build people. Because when I tried to build a church in a building, all the organic went away, and then
Oh,
it just becomes this structured thing. 3 songs, a nice message, everyone waves, goes home, goes out to lunch, same thing. See you on Wednesday. Okay, see you on Sunday. And it's this repetitive thing. Now, I'm not saying that the building isn't good. What I am saying is that, like you said, God accepts everyone. It's not up to me to change you. My job isn't to change you. My job is to be a pointer. Listen, you see that guy up there, that Jesus Christ that died for your sin? Listen, I'm pointing you to him. Whatever goes on between you and him, that's between you guys. As long as I do my job and disciple. So I'm basically discipling people in a way that is going to lead them to their identity, to understand. Even if you're not a believer, there's a gift that's inside of you. And that's where I am a big stigma breaker. Constantly, when somebody tells me that I can't do it this way, I'm like, tell me why. I've had pastor friends of mine. Well, you can't do church online. Why? Show me the template in the Word of God that tells me specifically how to do it, and I'll do it.
well, ask Joel Osteen. Doesn't he have a lot of online followers? Am I missing something there?
I
Yeah.
mean, this is the day and age that we're living. But the funny thing is that when COVID hit, all the all the same ones, and bless their heart, that were like, you can't do online. Hey, how do I go online? Oh, now you want to know.
That's right.
Now
That's
you
right.
want to know. I've been live streaming for 7 years.
Yeah.
Like, I can't teach you
Well,
in 2
all
weeks.
right. I'm going to interrupt. So, how do they? First of all, what's the name of your organization, and how do people get in touch with you?
My organization is called Set Free Life. All right. And so
Wait,
they
say it again, slower.
Set Free Life.
Set freed. FREED.
No, free, like set free, like when the sun sets you free. So
Okay.
Set Free Life. And you can find me at setfreelife.net. All of my resources,
All right.
everywhere that,
All right. I'm
all,
going to ask you to spell that. All right. Spell it for me. Is it www, right?
yep, set
www.set.
FREE
Mm-hmm.
life.net.
.net. Now let's see if I can get this to work the way it should work. Oop, oop. There it is. Setfreelife.net.
There,
Yeah. All
that's
right. So
where,
if you guys are asking if you're just listening to the podcast, it is setfreelife.net. Net. Don't forget
yes.
it's a net. But if you're here, you can see that we actually put it up on the screen. So I actually learned how to use some technology all of a sudden. Look at that, boy! I'm way out there.
You've got a gift. You've got a gift.
What's
And
I had somebody the other day. I'm going to interrupt. I had somebody,
right,
and I shouldn't say the other day. It was probably a few months ago. You know how that time gets away with you, especially COVID time.
right,
But they said, "Hey, if you would like to learn how to be a guest on a podcast, I'm selling this program for $17." And I'm looking at the headline, going, "If you want to learn how to be a guest on a podcast," I went, no. The way you learn how to be a guest on a podcast is you better have a darn good podcast person who helps you with a great, conversation. It shouldn't be you shouldn't have to learn something, and I certainly don't pay money to be a guest on a
right.
podcast. So it's funny that we got to teach everybody everything now. It's like,
Mm,
no,
no,
all you got now. I will say that people, I say, I was just about to say, all you got to do is talk, and everybody knows how to talk, but there's a way to talk to be entertaining, which is what you have to do online,
right,
and there's a
right,
way to talk to be boring, which is what they do for college commencement speeches.
right.
So I teach people how to. Matter of fact, I got websites out there called like Stop Boring Speakers and StopBoringMeetings.com,
Mm,
because so many people, including speakers, don't know how to engage an audience, keep them engaged, really connect with them, and that's one of the challenges. We all can talk, but so many of us are just way too boring. But so set free life is how they get a hold of your website.
correct.
Okay, and your email,
My email is recoverycoach@setfreelife.net.
recovery coach at setfreelife.net. Cool, right?
Yes. And on my website, there's everything there. My podcast, free download for my I am statements, also a free download of my top 10 tips, which I just put this book out last week called 100 Power Tips to Set You Free. These are all life experiences that I've gone through, and just putting them on paper, and just had a great response from it. So they can also go to Amazon. And if you just type in Coach Paul Tips, my book will come up, and then you can order it from there, and it'll be on my website here in a few weeks. So just working on some stuff, and that was my first book. So again, that was a gift, and things that I just felt impressed to do. And I just want to bring that word of encouragement. One of the most profound tips that I put in here was tip number 33, and it takes work to be consistent. And that's one of the greatest things that a lot of people battle with is consistency.
Oh, all the
And
time.
all the time, right?
My podcast is supposed to go out every like Tuesday morning at 6 a.m. and it's like, well, I forgot last Tuesday. What about this
Right,
Tuesday? No, it's already. Let's move it down the road another.
right.
Yeah, consistency is so hard.
And without the consistency, some of my summaries that I ask my clients to fill out is typically, I want to build my confidence. And there's no pill for confidence but consistency. And so when you get in motion, you start somewhere, because when you look at New Year's resolutions, right? Everyone's like, I want to do this one thing. And that's all they're geared on, is the one thing. Like, I want to lose 100 pounds. I want to do this. I want to do that. But then comes June, comes July, 4th of July. We got
Still
Easter,
want to lose 100 pounds.
right? I mean, it's just like, whoa. And so by the time you know it, it's November, and you've lost like 3 pounds, and now you're frustrated. There's no confidence, there's no momentum, there's no mastering it. Why? Because there was no consistency. So, what I help people do as well is say, listen, your confidence is going to be built by being consistent. Once you're consistent, let's try with 5 mini goals every day. If we could do 5 mini goals, well, what does that look like? Whatever you want to accomplish in that day, get
But no,
them.
I find that interesting. But when you say 5 mini goals, people go, "Well, like, what do you mean?" I go, "Well, when you set your goals for the day," they go, "Well, I don't do that." Well, I go, "I understand that. That's why we're talking about this, right? You got to
Right.
set 5 mini goals." And they go, "Like what?" Well,
Yeah.
don't you have 5 things you want to accomplish throughout the day? And they have to think about it. It's like, and you know what? Exactly what Paul is saying is true. If you got up and if tonight you went to bed and said, tomorrow I want to accomplish these 5 things, and you wrote them on a piece of paper and you put them on your desk or on your computer, if you put them there, right, and then crossed them off as you got there, I can guarantee you
Mhm.
that I've over the last 2 weeks I've had 200 mini goals to get everything ready to deliver to my venue tomorrow. It's actually tonight. We're going to be delivering a lot of stuff, but it's got to be written down. My wife will say, make sure you write that down, because hey, don't forget, we have to do this. Write that down. And
Right.
then you have these five, just five. It sounds so simple, but most people don't think they have to write them down. Well, I'll remember them. And then you ask
Mhm.
them midway through the next day, you go, well, what were your five goals? And they're like, well, I accomplished two of them. That was this and this. What are the other three? Uh, I'm not really sure. I probably would have put this and this, but that's just it. Paul's got it down. You start with five mini goals and see how it feels. See how it
Exactly.
really feels. Because that,
Exactly.
it's an interesting thing when people say, well, I felt really good after that. Right. So
Mhm.
you got to look at what you're doing. Look at what you're doing and see if it's making you feel better. Because as they say in the airplanes, right? Put your mask on first.
Mhm.
You can't help anybody else feel better until you first feel better. Right, Paul?
Absolutely. And you touched on something that is so imperative, that just write down the goals, put them down. Whatever's going to work for you. I used to try post-its. I used to try notepads. I got to a point, Steve, that I was like, I had 5 or 6 journals that had like one page, and I'm like, well, it's because of the style of journal. Let me try this journal. Let me try this
That's
color.
right.
Let me try this. And it got to a point where I literally went upstairs and I told my wife, what do you use to stay organized? She said, OneNote. I said, okay, show me how to use it. Within 5 minutes, I learned it. And I'm like,
Now wait,
wow,
you say OneNote, right? You
yes,
mean on your phone.
yes,
On your phone, right?
yep.
Everybody. He uses OneNote. I use a thing, and I don't even know what to tell you what it's called these days. I don't even know. Let's see. How do I find out what it's called? Anyway, it's a green thing. Yeah, I don't even know what it's called, but it's you know, if it wasn't for that program,
Right,
and I've got zillions of notes in there now. If I scrolled across, you would see all of these amazing notes,
right.
right? But like I can read you the titles of them. I got links. So anytime I need a link to something,
Yes,
because how many links do you guys end up with in the course of 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, right?
they're
I got
everywhere.
storytelling ads. So when I think of an idea, I don't necessarily just go to the phone and put an ad out for my business. I put
Right,
it into this note thing. Then I've got topics for what I want to talk on, what I want to write on, ideas and thoughts, right? Like here's one it's just for my talk. I'm doing a big talk in Las Vegas on June 17th, and it's called Tomorrowland, Future World and You. But it's just, boy, when you start to do this, like 3 months ago when I got the gig, you go, oh, this would be good to say during that talk. And if you didn't write it down, it would disappear. So you write
exactly.
those down, and then when you go to put the talk together over the next 3 or 4, 5 weeks,
Right,
right? You can pull these things out and go, oh, yeah, I forgot about that. And
right.
that's what Paul's talking about. And when you are successful with these goals, find out what works for you, find out what
Absolutely.
makes you feel better. And then you can start helping other people feel better. And that's what Paul does.
Well, one of the things that some of my clients have gotten stuck in is, I'm like, okay, so you're writing down these goals, because with them I do Google Sheets, which we're both able to share. So when I
Oh,
look at their goals, I'm like, okay, so you're missing this goal more than once. So where's the disconnect? And they're like, well, I thought that's what you wanted me to do. I said, no. This has nothing to do with me. What do you want to accomplish? And then that frees them. They're like, oh,
that's right.
so it's this or that. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, now chores, that's not part of your mini goals. I said, maybe wake up 30 minutes earlier today, walk for 30 minutes, um, take a break during the day, and literally have some self-care. How
You
about
want
you go and
the
sit and watch some ducks for a while?
I tell people all the time, Paul, that there's three things that will help them change their life. Only three. People go, only three. I go, three. That's the things you read,
Hmm.
the things you listen to or watch, and the people you associate with.
You
So
meet.
if on your goal you don't have read for 15 minutes today, right? And then set your timer on your phone so that you actually read for 15 minutes. You will be absolutely astounded how reading for 15 minutes, and I don't necessarily mean reading a Stephen King novel, although reading is reading, really. But
Right.
if you read something, and if I looked around my office, I probably got 70 books just stashed around here that will help me improve. Help me improve what? One's probably about my memory, one's probably about my writing, one's probably about my life. But if you just read 15 minutes a day, I tell the story all the time. My son, who's now 34, when he was 15 years old, one of my speaker friends said, "Steve, like I probably mentioned something about my kid." And he said, "Well, don't make him get a job when he turns 16." Well, I'm from John Deere country originally, and I was like, "Oh no, you got to get a job, right? You got to find the value of money." And he was like,
Right.
"Nope." I went, "What do you mean no?" And it was Cabot Roberts, and he goes, he's got a big, deep voice, and he goes, "What you have to do is pay your child to read a book of your choosing and then have a book report on it. So every book he finishes, he gets this much money. So if it takes him a week, let's say he worked at McDonald's, what would he learn at McDonald's if he went to work at McDonald's at 16? He says he'd probably learn how to hide and not do great job, because that's what so many people who are working minimal jobs and part-time jobs, they don't want to work hard. They don't want to excel necessarily.
Right.
So they're finding ways to avoid work. And I went, well, that's a good point, because I've owned businesses. I know that feeling, right? How you got to keep them on their toes. And he said, instead, have him read that book. So I looked at my son. He said, that'd be great. And I started him on financial books, Millionaire Next Door, Acres of Diamonds, smaller books that would, he'd be able to get through. And he started picking this up and reading for his 20. I paid him $25 per book. So I think he was
Mm.
reading 2 books a week, which would
Wow.
equivocally be a part-time job.
Hmm.
And I said, okay, cool. And you know what? When he was 30, something happened in our lives. The IRS got involved in my life, and the IRS glommed onto some of his money. And I mean, it was a significant part of money. And I went, oh, and he and his wife were going to go on a vacation. And I went, oh, I'll try and get that right back to you. I'll try and see if we can transfer it out before. And he went, no, don't worry about it. When I get back from vacation, I went, no, no, it's this much money. He goes, yeah, I'll get it when I get back. And I was like, well, you don't need that money to go on vacation? See, and I'm 55 years old or something. I'm like, I would need that money to go on vacation, right? He's like,
Right.
no, Dad, I got it saved up. Don't worry about it. I went, well, how much
Wow.
can you possibly have saved up? And then he told me how much he had saved up. From the time he was 17 to the time he was 30, he'd already saved like 5 times as much money as I haven't dreamed of saving up.
Wow.
And it was because he learned so much in reading the
Mm.
right books, right? Doing the right things, that he went on to read even more books and read even more books and learn about money. And people say, well, he's probably had a great job. My son's a bartender,
Wow.
right? So it's not like he was making $150,000 a year and could save money. He was working as a bartender and
Right.
managed to save his money because he read the right things to put him in his head. And so I tell Coach Paul, that's one of the things that we have to also acknowledge is what you do with that. You've got 5 things you want to accomplish. Make
Hmm.
sure they're valuable to you. Right,
Right.
right, Paul?
Exactly. These goals, the way that I work with my clients is, okay, so now that we've got some momentum, what's your month? What's your week goal? Like what do you want to accomplish in a week now that you've got all these wins? Because they're like excited, like, oh my God, I got like 50 goals in 2 weeks that I've done. Cool. All right. So now let's start honing it down. What do you want to accomplish this next week? And then we start looking into the month, and then 3 months, and then a year. This way now, instead of you just doing one goal, you're literally doing 5 different goals, and you're accomplishing all those mini goals. So, for instance, this year, my goal was to have so many podcasts under my belt. My goal was to write the book. My goal was to lose a certain amount of weight. I did that within the first half of my year. So guess what?
Cool.
Now the rest of my year, I can create. Now all the things that I'm like, now what do I do with my time? Well, I can honestly, I can literally just be like, I'm cool for the rest of the year. Or I can say, you know what? If I did all that in 6 months, what can I do in the next 3 months so that I can enjoy my Christmas? I can enjoy my Thanksgiving. I'm not rushing to do something. Within that time, I can put out another book because it took me 3 months to get this book together, 3 months to get it into the process. Now that I know the process, I think I can handle it all in 90 days. Get ready to launch that puppy close to Christmas, great Christmas gift, and have these different aspirations because I've done all the work. And this is why it's imperative that we understand it is going to take work to be consistent. However, if we start with small, attainable goals, we can definitely get the big goal done. So, that's
What is it they say? How do you eat an elephant?
one piece at a time.
One bite at a time. That's exactly right. And that's what most of us. I've been working with lots of people over this last year. I mean, it's phenomenal how many people come out of the woodwork and say, Steve, I want to do this. We want to help with that. And what I found, Paul, is that there's so many people who say, I need to learn how to do this. So let's start back with our basic education. How do you teach your kid about money when you don't know about money?
Mhm.
Right? And most of us don't know about money. Like I ask people all the time, what's the rule of 72 when it comes to money? Now I'm going to ask Paul because I'm going to put Paul right on the spot. Do you know what the rule of 72 is when it comes to money, Paul?
I have no clue, my man.
See, I'm telling you, 80% of the people I talk to, and I learned this when I was 55. So I'm 70 now. So don't think it was something I just, I've been doing this my whole. At 55, somebody told me, they said, why don't you use the rule of 72? I went, I don't have any idea what you're talking about. Rule of 72 when it comes to money says, now, if you will divide your interest rate that you're getting on your money into 72, right? That's how long it will take your money to double. So if I was getting 10% on my money, right? So let's say I put my money into the bank and I was getting 10%. It would take 7 years, 7.2 years for that money to double. Does that make sense? Yeah, 7.2 years. So here's what I tell people all the time. If you've got kids or grandkids under the age of 10 or right about 10, that age, imagine if you put $1,000 away. So I want you to really think about this, people who are listening. If you put $1,000 away for when they're 10, $1,000 away when they're 11, 12, 13, through the age of 20. And then you don't put any more money away from them. And it's earning 8% on an average from that day forward. And you put it into a trust. So when your grandchild turns 60 years old, you'll be long dead, right? But at 60 years old, that trust now pops out for your grandchild. And they go, what did grandpa leave me? Right? Something on a trust. It came in the mail. Wow, what's this all about? And that 10,000 that you invested, $1,000 a year for 10 years, will be at 8%, right? $1.2 million.
Wow.
What? How can that be? See, the rich keep getting richer because the rich understand interest, the rule of
Principle.
72.
Yeah.
And if you do that for your grandchildren, imagine now I'm 71. If 10 years ago, my folks would have done that for me, but they didn't know either. Keep that in mind. If they'd have done that for me, if at 60 years old, it would have popped out and said, hey, Steve, you have $1.2 million. Would I have gone, crap, what am I going to do with that? Right? No,
Right.
you'd have said, holy cow, because as hard as we think we're working, the average 50-year-old in America has less than $50,000 put aside for their own retirement, which is nuts. Okay. So when we're talking here about how Paul can teach you stuff, one of the things you might want to do in your goals, again, read for 15 minutes, learn for 15 minutes, find something that you don't know, get on the next podcast, sit and listen to a 15-minute podcast of money, 15-minute podcast of how to write a book,
Right.
right? By the way, do you have a video on how to write a book out there, Paul?
Not yet. Not yet.
Coming.
It's
You need to
coming.
make it. You need to put it out there
Yeah.
because the other thing I tell people all the time, Paul, is um, authors won't make any money on their book. Sorry, authors won't make any money on your book. So how do you make money? You
Exactly.
get on a stage and you start talking about what your book is about. You
Yes.
start telling people, you start sharing, and then people will hire you to go talk about your book. And then you sell
Exactly.
books at the event, right? So you're still
Exactly.
not going to make much money on your book. But what you're going to do is start changing lives because you wrote a book on this topic. Then you're going out sharing that. People are going to buy your book. And when they read it, they're going to go, oh, holy cow, I didn't know this. And changes their life a little at a time. And that's what I do with Speaker Talks. I put people on a stage to talk for
Mhm.
15 minutes about their expertise. But that's the thing that most people don't understand. What do you want to do one bite at a time? Isn't that what Paul just said? One bite at a time can change
Exactly.
your life. So before we wrap this up, Paul, what advice do you have for everybody today?
The number one advice that it just keeps ringing in my ear to help people is to understand, is just stay consistent. Just be consistent because you can accomplish your goals and also change your vocabulary because there's so many times, including myself, I need to attack this. No, accomplish it, work on it, right? Stop saying struggle and turn it into a challenge, right? Because when you're struggling, that means you're wrestling. But if it's a challenge, it's almost like, it's a challenge. Okay, cool. I'm up to this challenge. And so just staying consistent. And to your point, it usually takes about 15 minutes to read one chapter. An
Oh, yeah.
average book has anywhere from 10 to 12 chapters. If you do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night, guess what? In a week, you've read a book. So now by the end of the year, you can literally say, I want to read 20 books by the end of the year. 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. By the time you know it, the book is done. So just stay consistent, keep the mindset fresh, and continue to learn so that you can be set free.
Absolutely. Phenomenal advice right there. And that's one of the things that we want you to start doing is setting yourself free. And you do that through knowledge. When he talked
Mhm.
about vocabulary, most of us say, hey, there's a stoplight up ahead. Really? How about it's a traffic light, right? Because there's no good or bad. Stop sounds bad, right? You can't say it's a green light up ahead unless it turns green, but we don't say, hey, there's a red light most of the time. We say it's a stoplight.
Right.
So how about if it's a traffic light, right? Zig Ziglar used to call it an opportunity light because it gave you an opportunity to get through that intersection safely. But
Mm.
Paul's exactly right is when we start talking about our vocabulary, how many times do you use the F word when you talk? If you're out there listening, I use it more often than I really want to. My dad would freak out if he heard me saying the F word as much as I say it. If he heard me say it once, I
Right.
don't think I ever heard my dad cuss. He always went, doggone it,
Yeah.
right? Dag nabbit. And you sound
Yeah.
so, that's absurd. But you know what? That's who my dad was. And
Right.
for a long time, that's who I was. And then the world changed. And now
Mm.
the F word is so common. I used to take offense, be in a restaurant, somebody would say something behind, and my kids are sitting there, and I'd have to get up and say, hey, I'm going to ask you not to say that, use that language around my kids.
Right.
Now, everybody uses it. It's no big deal,
Mhm.
supposedly. It doesn't even have an impact most of the time. So I'm going to go back to what Paul said, which is improve your vocabulary. Hey, how about you guys have? I've got a program, an app or something. That's every week in my email or every day in my email sends me a new word of the day. Now,
Mm.
do I memorize those words? No, but do I get a chance to look at them, find out what they mean? And you know what? It changes you. It changes you, and
Yeah.
it will make you smarter. Whether you remember that word or another word, you will get
Absolutely.
smarter. Anyway, Paul, I really appreciate you being on here today. Don't click off. I
Thank you.
want to talk to you right afterwards. But
Awesome.
it's just one of those deals where we want you to improve. So, Paul, give us real quick how they get in touch with you again.
They can visit my website, which is setfreelife.net. They can also email me at recoverycoach@setfreelife.net. And if you want to check out my book, you can go to Amazon and just type in Coach Paul Life Tips, and my book will pop up. And, would love to hear your feedback. So that's where you can find me, or on a Facebook at facebook.com/Coach Paul Ybarra. Everything's attached to Coach Paul.
Cool. Thanks a lot, Paul. Sure appreciate your time. And with that, we're going to sign off. If you have any problems, you can get a hold of me, Steve at stevesapato.com. You've been listening to Speaker Talks, and you've been listening to The Happiness Agenda. God bless.